moment. We will be. That's 12 seconds. 12 seconds delay. The live feed.
Just the other day, you can YouTube live on top. I don't know what you do with that piece. If something like that, someone's everything.
Yeah, better now. I've done ads.
You'd have to have, because we do it for a podcast.
Okay, councillors, please stand. Welcome, councillors, members of the executive and members of the public now for our live stream. Swan Rural City Council acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet and pays its respects to their elders, past and present. Read, Councillor.
We beseech you, Lord, that we may be granted wisdom, understanding and sincerity of purpose in the decisions we are called on to make for the welfare of the people of the rural city of Swan Hill.
Please be seated. Apologies.
Yes, Mr Mayor, Councillor McKay is an apology.
Thank you. Motion of minutes.
Move that we accept that apology, Mr Mayor.
Seconder.
I'll second.
Councillor Jeffrey, all in favour? Yes. Declaration of conflict of interest. Declaration.
I'll move the ordinary minutes, Mr Mayor. I'll move that we accept the ordinary minutes of the meeting held on 21st of April.
Okay. Thank you. Can we have a second? Thanks. Johnson. In favour. Thank you. Carried. Declarations of conflict of interest. Don't have any. Thank you. Receptions and reading of petitions, memorials, joint letters and direct deputations.
No, none, Mr Mayor.
Public question time. We have questions. Suspend standing orders, please.
Can I move a motion that we suspend standing orders?
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Johnson. All in favour? Yes, all in favour. First question is from Shay Stapleton, who is in 3 parts. Due to the little information being disclosed to the public about the proposal for the International Flight School to take up residency in our community at the Aerodrome Road, I would like to ask the following questions of council members at the next meeting. Question 1. If plans go ahead and our council fork out the finances for the upgrades needed to our current aerodrome in order to facilitate the flight school, would the lease they are likely to pay cover the cost of the upgrades?
Mr Mayor, I'll answer that question if I may. The upgrades at the aerodrome come in many parts, and in fact members of the public will see in the Guardian of this week an advertisement for a tender for some pavement works. These are works that have been planned for over 12 months, and they are to make provision for parking so that Jet A1 fuel can be provided at the aerodrome. A request that's come from our business community for a number of years now. There is also plans in place for runway strengthening, improvements to taxiways and other associated works. These are in part already funded. We're also seeking to use those funds that Council already has to leverage grant funds that we've currently got applications in for, which would also assist in the provision of works for the flight school. So to go to the core of the question, any works that are provided by Council for a flight school at the aerodrome which works specifically for their benefit, would be leased back at a commercial rate of return. So council sees a commercial rate of return on its investment, where that investment is for a private entity.
Thank you. Question 2. If the flight school were to sign a long lease for the aerodrome, what would this mean for other aircrafts that use this as a takeoff, landing zone, such as our air ambulance, courier planes and local farmers, commercial flights, etc.? Would the flight school have the say in who is allowed to use this facility?
Thank you. Last part of the question first. No flight school or no one individual user will have a say or control of who gets to use the aerodrome. It's a public aerodrome and all users are welcome. There are rules about who has priority for takeoff and landing. There's communication protocols in the aviation industry. This works quite well, almost always in all aerodromes across not only Australia but the world. And there are at times communication issues where there is confusion about who has priority, but that is by far in the minority, and there is very clear protocols for who has access and who has use. In actual fact, all users of the aerodrome are required to work in cooperation with all other users.
Thank you. And question 3. Why, if council members have known about this issue since November 2019, perhaps 10 months ago, the public only now hearing about it?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's a good question, actually. Council entertains many economic development and other opportunities pretty much on a weekly, if not monthly basis, the vast majority of which actually come to nothing. There is lots of discussions and approaches to see if a particular development or business opportunity or community development opportunity may be of benefit and may take hold. Some of them do actually get some momentum up, and certainly the opportunity for a flight school at Swan Hill has now become a seriously considered option, and the Australian Aviation Alliance have made formal approaches to council, so it was certainly time to bring this to council and therefore to advise the community of what council are currently considering. It's really a matter of timing. If it's not practical for council to bring every economic development opportunity that is its infancy to council, we would be tying up time of issues that are never going to go anywhere.
Second group of questions come from Lucy Tui. Question 1. If the proposed flight training school goes ahead, will Swan Hill City Council have the power to enforce adherence to the agreed flight paths, training grounds and hours of operation, or will these simply become mere recommendations?
Again, another good question goes to the issue of amenity and how this development might impact on the people living in Swan Hill and surrounds. We have, as discussed with council, have agreed that in any lease or aerodrome user agreement put in place that there will be requirements for hours of operation, preferred flight paths and also training grounds. We've still to do some work on the extent to which they can be enforced, and that's something we'll be coming back to council with, which will then of course be shared with the community given the concerns that are being expressed as to how those matters are then regulated and enforced. What we have observed with Australian Aviation Alliance is that their current base in Mildura, where they're looking to expand from, they've been very active in wanting to work with the municipality there to come agreed flight paths and agreed training grounds, but we've got a lot more work to do on that.
Question 2. The private company proposed sending 200 learner drivers to train on the streets of Swan Hill. Would council embrace this without due consideration to the safety implications of this scenario? With reference to the proposed flight training school, is safety in our skies any less important, and will council give due consideration to the increased risk posed by a large number of inexperienced pilots in the skies?
This is a question that will be difficult for me to answer, other than to say that the roads in Swan Hill has significant amounts of traffic on it already, and the skies in Swan Hill have very, very little aircraft traffic. We have an excellent aerodrome that has very, very light use, but there are rules of use of the skies, just like there are rules of use of the road, and all users of the skies are required to abide by those. So CASA is the regulates safety. They regulate the standards of training of pilots and the operation and behaviour of pilots. So, of course, council has an interest in the safety of our residents and those who are using our skies. but ultimately it is CASA that has the control of those rules.
Question 3. Some of years ago, Council removed the road sign at the south end of Aerodrome Road. This was apparently due to the height restrictions relating to the aerodrome overlay. In view of this, do trucks and agricultural machinery measuring higher than this sign and travelling along the back of the road, as they frequently do, actually pose a risk to air traffic associated with the aerodrome? Or vice versa? Will a dramatic increase in air traffic from a proposed flight training school further increase this risk?
Mr Mayor, I don't have any information on that sign on the back Boga Road. I'm not able to answer that specifically about the sign, but what I can say is that there is no restrictions on height of traffic, even high semis travelling along the back Boga Road, posing any sort of a risk to the approaches or departure from the main runway of the Swan Hill Aerodrome. There is significant vegetation around the area, quite in fact within the environs of the airport that is higher than the legal traffic, so we're not aware of any such restrictions.
Now, final questions from Rachel Ashton. Flight School, how can you guarantee quiet enjoyment of our property at noise pollution?
Well, I don't think Council's in a position to guarantee anything in relation to that. What I can say, Mr Mayor, is that if a flight school comes to Swan Hill, it will see a significant increase in air traffic in and out of the Swan Hill Aerodrome, and that will come with increased noise. No doubt about that.
Thank you. That completes public question time. Now, we need a mover to resume standing.
Move to resume standing orders.
Councillor Johnson, all in favour? Carried. Section B, reports. Item B, 20.24, re-subdivision, house excision of land in the farming zone, 1665 Robinvale Sea Lake, Bannerton, and 390 Phillips Road, Bannerton. Ms. Green, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is a planning application for the re-subdivision of 2 lots to create a house lot excision. I think it's of about 12 hectares, 12.66 hectares around an existing dwelling, and consolidating the remainder of that lot with an adjoining property to create a lot of 558 hectares. I want to remind Council of its role to look beyond the next year or two when determining these sorts of applications. The planning scheme looks at the long-term future of its agricultural land when determining the requirements for subdivision and creating smaller house lots within the middle of the farming area, and the impact that these smaller house lots can have on the future of agriculture. If you view figure 2 on page 5 of the report, it does show the development of the general area for intensive horticulture, irrigated horticulture, and there is a possibility that this land at some stage will become intensive horticulture, and having dwellings that are on smaller lots that are in essence a rural residential type development does at times conflict with the activities of an intensive horticultural property, which, as we know these days, tends to operate 7 days a week, sometimes 24 hours a day. I'm not going to go through all the things in the report. It's quite a comprehensive report, and it does explain and uses BCAT decisions to outline why the application does not comply with the planning scheme. The one area it does comply, which is about creating a larger agricultural lot, and that's at 558. That's a good outcome to create a larger lot, but there's still a concern of having a smaller lot with a house on it. And whilst the current owner may well live in that site, at some stage it will be sold, and it won't be the current owner in there who's going to be quite accepting of the horticultural or agricultural influences on the nearby properties. So the recommendation, and you've got to go quite a few few pages on that, is that council issue a refusal to grant a planning permit for the re-subdivision of those lots in Bannerton, based on that it is inconsistent with state and local planning policies outlined there and not consistent with the purpose of the farming zone. And there are some dot points there as well.
Questions, councillors? Yes, Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Of that 12 hectares of the house lot that's wanting to be excised from the remaining 528, how much of that's actually land farmed at the moment?
It would appear that none of it is farmed.
Yeah, so it's all natural vegetation.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, some, yeah. But certainly it doesn't look like it's ever been farmed.
Yeah.
Yes, Councillor.
Are you aware of any investigations that's been done into that, the block next to, I can't read it, it's too small, the block next to the horticulture area at the moment on the far to the west, is it the west or the east? Next to all the, it's an almond farm, it's a select farm.
Yeah.
Yep. Are you aware of any investigation that Hort have done into getting water to this stretch of land on both sides of the Sea Lake Rombale Road?
No.
Yes, Councillor Clegg.
Yes, Mr. Gordon, I take it this land, if we did agree with the subdivision, would stay farming zone? Thank you.
I have a question. Were the applicants made aware that the minimum lot size?
Yes. Council may recall that at an assembly we had the planning consultant here, and there is, there is some logic for that, the size of that lot, given, as Councillor Bennett has said, it is all natural vegetation and has clearly been used probably as their house lot, for want of a better description.
Yes, Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Are you aware also that you can see on the aerial view of the area that the dryland farming on the other side of the Rombale Sea Lake Road is also owned by, that one is also owned by the same owner?
I wasn't aware of that.
Which leads me to another question.
Yes, Councillor Bennett.
Which also, that first part down Phillips Road, which is the road directly across, it's an unsealed road, the owner of this farm also owns another house in there as well.
I wasn't aware of that in particular. I was aware that these people own a lot of land.
Yes.
In the general vicinity.
Yes.
Any further questions, Councillor Bennett?
I've just got a question on the lifetime estate, Mr Mayor. Have there been very many other examples of this lifetime estate option being recommended in the Rombale area?
I'm not aware of it here. Certainly in other parts of the state it is used, yes.
Because it's all involving one family,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah. And I'm sure council understand it's where the person in the house gets to stay in the house until they either move or they're to become deceased, and then the land reverts to the farm.
So in that case, what happens then when the rest of the family already have homes established on, because they are large landowners, they already have established family homes on other sections of the farm and predominantly that 528 hectare lot. If that reverts back to the farm, that dwelling reverts back to the farm. They don't need staff to run a dry land farm, the family are doing it themselves. What happens then, would you agree, is what's happening through the Mallee now, and you can see it in Chincook where the houses are left to almost rot away.
That's what happened.
Yep.
And I guess it's the council's role is that balancing act between that occurring and protecting the agricultural land versus allowing a smaller lot, in this case it's not that small, it's 12 hectares, and the potential conflict might not be for 5 years, 10 years, it might be in 15 years' time, but I can guarantee, maybe not in this particular case, but we get lots of conflict with rural living type properties in the middle of horticultural and agricultural areas.
Sorry.
No, you've got a follow-up question on.
So with regard to that then, would it be preferable that we, because there's 12 hectares there, that if no one was living in that plot, that could be then developed at great cost for native veg removal? Or would it be better in a long-term solution, and we're talking generationally down the track, that native veg and that historical house can be maintained for generations to come?
There are pros and cons. There are no doubt there are pros and cons. And it is a balancing act.
Yes. Thank you, Ms Green.
Yes, Councillor.
Then, Ms Green, the proposed 500 hectares of the
balance
of land,
yeah.
have they got a right, if they come back to council, is there any opportunity for us to object if they want to subdivide that into 250 lots? Or have they just got the right?
Let's assume council issued a permit here. I'm pretty sure, and I'll just double check, that there would be a condition saying no extra house and no re-subdivision. Because the benefit, you're getting a benefit by consolidating that into a bigger farm. You don't want to then create you don't want to lose the benefit.
173 agreement?
Yeah.
How enforceable are those 173 agreements?
Oh, yeah, they're enforceable.
They can be broken as well.
They can be with council's agreement.
Green, exactly how far from Robinvale is this proposed extension?
23 k's. Usually says in the first paragraph. Oh, 19. I've got 19 south of Robinvale
Is there
Central.
any other dry land between it and Robinvale?
Oh, it would, well, it depends. A bit patchy, I suppose.
Can I help answer that? Yes, there is. The same landowner owns the dry land farm. Well, sorry, he doesn't own it. He leases it. It's Crown land around the Robinvale Aerodrome, in fact, which is all dry land on that side. There is a reason that this hasn't been sold off for horticulture, and that getting water to it is not viable even for the corporate companies that own the almond farms around it. But yes, they do own. There are more dry land farms between Robinvale and
You only have to look to the north there and the northeast.
and there's a lot more heading into Nangatang to the south, yeah.
Any further questions, councillors? Yes.
I'd like to move the motion as per option 2 that council grant a permit for the re-subdivision and dwelling excision of the land located at 1665 Robinvale Sea Lake Road and 390 Phillips Road, Bannerton, subject to conditions in accordance with the endorsed plans.
Wait a second.
I'll second that.
Councillor Young. Mr. Speaker, Councillor Young.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. This is a balancing act, and I never thought I'd get so passionate about planning schemes, but when you see houses that have been unable to be subdivided or excised from farms that are generationally owned, and families have set up their sons or daughters to take up farming after parents and grandparents have moved on, and houses do just rot away. It's really quite sad to see. The plot that we're talking about, the 12 hectares, is all native vegetation at the moment. So it would be a wonderful rural lifestyle block. It might be a hard sell into the future. It's not near the river. It is 20 odd k's out of the Robinvale CBD. Having said that, preserving the natural vegetation when it's being ripped down around us, and a good example of that is the Weeman turnoff, it borders this property in fact, and a lot of native vegetation has been taken out there. But not only that, this is a family farm, and they are a Robinvale stalwart family who are big landowners. It's smart business to consolidate the 2 blocks into the 528 hectares. The boys that are running the farm now have family homes set up on those farms. They farm the farm directly across the road from this house lot. There is another house already on that, which is rented out as worker accommodation. I just think, as a matter of preservation of not only native veg, but a historical home, and not seeing that historical home just rot away to nothing into the future. I think preservation of a farmland, native veg, and a historical home, it's within our interest, looking at the bigger picture, to allow this excision.
I'd just like to back up what Councillor Benham has just said about historical houses that are out on blocks. That I think it's in our best interests to try and conserve those. Not that it's appropriate in every case, but I see the cost of removing the native vegetation, which is going to make it probably not as good a block for in terms of conservation in the whole area. The cost of removing that's going to make it almost impossible, and the native vegetation that's there, I think it's probably a good idea to start conserving that out there. And I think the water issue of taking water onto some of these blocks means that it may never happen, so I would just like to back up what Councillor Bennett has just said.
Thank you. Further speakers for the motion? Further speakers against the motion?
I'll speak against the motion, Mr Mayor. Look, I take on board what Councillor Benham has said. The long-term family in the area, been farming in the area for a long time. We talk to an older home that's been in the area for a long time. Any business has to have a succession plan. Farming is no different to any other business. We have just had a discussion previously about rates modelling and how the price of farming land, dry farming land, is going up. By allowing this type of thing to continue around our municipality is going to increase the value of farming land and dry land in the farms, because you're setting up these house lots into the future. Just because it's happened in the past, it shouldn't happen in the future, and they should be looking at the farmers themselves, should be looking at if they have the kids that maybe not building the farms. There's nothing stopping their children moving to this farm if it's a historical home and continue living in this home. There's nothing stopping the current owners living in this current home as it is without subdividing it. So we don't need to do anything, we can leave it as is. They can live there for as long as they like, and they can do what they like with that house on that farm. But to exercise it off is planning's all about not the immediate future, as Ms Green said, it's a long-term future. This family may be around for long-term. No one can guarantee what's going to happen in the future. No one guessed COVID was going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen in the future, so we're going to look at planning into the future, and we can't start this, because once you go down this path, councillors, then you have other farmers coming in saying the same thing, and all these lifestyle blocks spasmodically spread around the municipality, which is not the idea of planning at all. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Further speakers against the motion?
I'll speak against, thank you, Mr Mayor. I just want to touch on, it is our role as councillors to assess this as a planning application. The policies and the strategies that exist both in state and with our own council is about protecting farmland to ensure that it can be farmed into the future, whether that's for the rest of the year or for 50 years into the future. And our strategies and our guidelines quite clearly state that the excising of houses from rural land will be a detriment to the farmland in that area for the foreseeable future. So as much as I hear the argument and the case for protecting the native vegetation, or more so the historic home, at the end of the day, 50 years' time, the farmland will be there to farm, the house may not be. Farmlands don't build structure, as you know, it needs maintaining, renovating and upkeep. So at some point, any built infrastructure needs to be upkept. It is our role to think for the future and to protect the farmland. So I don't see this as applicable for appropriate subdivision or house extension. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Further speakers against the motion? I'd like to close the debate.
I'm fine, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Right, we'll go to a vote. All those in favour of the motion? Those against? The motion is lost. No further
I'll move the original recommendation, Mr Mayor. The motion as per the original recommendation number 1, that we a refusal to grant a planning permit.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Jeffries. Wish to speak to the motion?
Look, it's all good said, Mr Mayor. It's, as I say, it is a very emotional thing, especially for farmers and families that have been on land for so long. Unfortunately, you've got to take the emotion out of planning. Planning is not about emotion, it's about reality. And I believe that this is the appropriate way to go. All our planning schemes, or the state planning schemes, say that this should not happen, and we're just complying with them. It's a black and white situation, unfortunately, this situation. So I feel for the farmers, I feel for the family up there. They're long standing in the area. I understand that, but we've got to abide by the planning scheme. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Speak.
Most of the points have been touched on, Mr. Mayor, and it's appropriate for the planning strategies and policies in place. Thank you.
Before speaking for the motion, any against the motion? Being none, we'll go to a vote. Those in favour of the motion? 4. Those against? 2. Motion is carried. Item B, 20.26, quarterly review of financial performance. Sorry, this one.
Page 22.
Item B, 20.25, extension of time, 4-lot subdivision and general residential zone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an application for an extension of time to a permit. The permit has already been extended once, and this is a second request. Council will recall that I think it was at the last council meeting, it refused an application for a 4-lot subdivision of this property without the 1.5 metre extension to the laneway. And it did so because of the width of the laneway, which was to provide access to lots 3 and 4. This permit was, as I said, was issued in 2015. It's been extended once, and the applicant now wishes to proceed with this permit. There are 5 or 6 reasons or tests the council must consider when deciding whether to allow an extension of time for a permit. They are listed here in the report. Whether there's been a change in planning policy, whether the landowner is seeking to warehouse the permit, intervening circumstances which bear upon the grant or refusal of the extension, the lapse of time, whether the time limit imposed was adequate, economic burden on the landowner, and the probability of a permit issuing should a fresh application be made. They have been gone through in detail in the report, and in this instance it's considered that there are good reasons not to allow an extension of this permit, as council refused an application last meeting, and if this was resubmitted today, our officers would be recommending a refusal as well, because that laneway width is still not wide enough to allow access to lots 3 and 4, and then further down the lane as well. As mentioned at last meeting, it's not about stopping development of this site. With some redesign of the subdivision or redesign of the layouts or units on this site, it certainly can be developed, and we would encourage the owner to pursue a different sort of development to get some residential development happening. So the recommendation is that council refuse the extension of time for the subdivision of 4 lots at 17 Albert Street, Swan Hill, and that we notify the applicant and the landowner of the decision.
Any questions, councillors? I just have one, and to be quite clear, the old design of 2015 does not comply with the current IDM.
That's right.
Secondly, there's nothing precluding the present owners bring back a design that does comply.
That's right. And there are a number of options that they would have to do that.
They can do that. Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? No? I have a mover, please.
I'll move as per the recommendation.
As per the recommendation, do I have a seconder? Yes, Councillor McPhee. You just speak, Councillor.
I don't really need to say a lot with regard to this. I think the reasons that have been given in the report for refusal, this is an ongoing carousel of hoop jumping, and it's still not compliant with what the requirements are until it is. I agree with Ms Green that it should be developed, but it should be developed in a compliant way, and I'm sure once it is, it'll be a great development, but as it stands, it's not compliant.
Councillor Booth.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, the fact that this is applying for a second extension in itself shows that the applicant has some concerns. And they also took another bite of the cherry, bringing a new application to council just recently on this same block, which we rejected. They've had 4 years and 3 months to do something on this. All the six or seven criteria that Ms Green spoke about before, that the planning laws, the have all changed. I think it's inappropriate to give them a further extension in relation to this issue. And as the Mayor asked before the question, there's nothing stopping them putting a new submission in that will allow good planning, as what we discussed previously. That's what we've got to take into consideration, whether it's out in the dry land or whether it's in town, whether the good planning outcomes for the future of Swan Hill. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Further speakers for the motion? Any against the motion? Dr. Close, Councillor.
It's all been said, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. We'll go to a vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. So now we'll go on to item 126. Quarterly review of financial performance and finance conditions for March the 31st, 2020.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is projection ahead based on the trading that we had up to the 31st of March, which was 9 months trading, and the forecasts that we're showing in the report obviously have been heavily impacted by the closure of several council facilities due to the COVID pandemic. The figures that I'm forecasting here assume that those facilities will remain closed until the 30th of June. Obviously, if they close beyond the 30th of June, that's an issue for next year, not an issue for this report itself. The pleasing thing is that we've been able to take various actions, including reemployment of some staff, various other actions that have limited the current projected effect on our finances to about $6,000 worse than what we had budgeted for. So the net effect of everything, so the net effect of the negatives of loss of income due to COVID, but with savings, etc., that we had already projected and additional savings that we projected, mean that this report is estimating a net effect of $6,000 for the current financial year. The effect on next financial year is yet to be determined. It's proposed that we will continue with the budget and then monitor that as the year rolls out, as we do anyway. That's standard practice, is that we monitor the finances on a regular basis and bring reports to council and adjust as necessary. So the report is for information and for noting, Mr Mayor.
Questions, councillors? Yes, Councillor Jeffrey.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Latton, the provisions for legal fees and the transfer to valuation of vehicles, that's transferring of $250,000 a lot into a reserve for legal fees or any valuation of vehicles.
Mr Mayor, the answer to that question is that's basically correct. It's relating to an appeal that's currently before VCAT on the revenue that the solar farms currently pay council. So rather, as a legal matter, not going into more detail than that, but that's a provision that we're taking in that matter.
Further questions, councillors? Being none, may I have a mover, please?
I'll move that we, as per the recommendation, that we adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Do I have a second there? Yes, Councillor Young. Wish to speak, Councillor Jeffrey?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. There obviously is a requirement that we report every quarter on our financial position. Obviously there's a lot going on and a fairly big impact with what's happened during the COVID scenario and the lack of tourism, lack of events that have been able to be held in our municipality and impact across the whole world. And that has had a bit of an impact, but hopefully through the continual review of what we are undertaking as a council, we're trying to save some cost of ratepayers wherever we can. So let's just hope that we can stick close to $0 overspend or underspend. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that $6,000 is really nothing in this day and age with everything that's going on in the moment. So yeah, that's going well.
No, any further speakers? Against? We'll go to vote. All those in favour of the motion? Yes, carried unanimously. Item B 20.27, amendments to the Renewable Energy Power Purchase Agreement for local government. Mr. Lamb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report is seeking council approval to amend the agreement, or in fact remove the stop one agreement and start a new agreement in relation to the power purchase agreement that council was intending to enter into. Originally, the intention was that the agreement was made with the Municipal Association of Victoria to act as the agent to acquire the power purchase agreement for renewable energy for about, I think it was roughly 50 odd councils across the state. Various events happened over the course of since that agreement was signed that made it necessary to do a review of the legality of the way it was being proposed, and also the MAV's required fee structure, etc. So that review was independently done by Maddox solicitors and resulted in a recommendation that councils that want to continue to participate in the power purchase agreement with the MAV's approval, I might add, terminate their agreement with the MAV and enter into a new agreement with directly with Darabin, who will act as the lead council in relation to this power purchase agreement. That has meant that we will be entering into a temporary 12-month contract for existing power requirements, because it's expected that this tender process now will be delayed some time, and we probably won't be in a position to take it up until the 1st of July. However, it is intended that the originally proposed savings and obviously environmental benefits of the original proposal will be maintained through that tender process. So the recommendation is that council agrees to terminate our agreement with the MAV for the purposes of the power purchase agreement, appoint Darabin City Council as the lead agent to secure that power purchase agreement, and authorise the signing of the new participation deed to enable actions under 1 and 2 to occur.
Questions? Yes.
Yeah, 2 questions. Again, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Lunton, if we go ahead with this proposal, have Darabin City be the lead agent, do we have to sign an agreement if we're not happy with what the outcome would be?
Yeah, thank you. A good question. There are multiple stages throughout the process where we can walk away. So the signing of this agreement is a statement of intent. Basically, they will commence the process and be the lead council. However, at the tender stage, so once the tender results come back and we're not happy with the results, we can walk away. If there's the next stage would be if we're happy with those tender results, but the way that the contract's going to be managed, if we weren't happy with that, we can walk away, and other stages as well. So there are a number of points at which if council's not happy with the way the project is progressing, that we can walk away without any additional cost.
Second question, if I can, Mr. Mayor. How many other councils were in the agreement with MRV? Are they all, or are they all going to come across to Darabin City?
We don't know the outcome if they're all coming to Darabin, but if they don't come across with Darabin, then they certainly won't be proceeding with the MAV, because the MAV is no longer proceeding with this process. So we believe that all councils that were progressing with the MAV will come across to Darabin, but we haven't got the numbers for that because they're all in various similar stages to us putting reports to council to see if their council is willing to change.
That's fine. Thank you.
Through
you, Mr. Mayor, we've recently had questions about the stability of the operation of the Darabin Council. Are there any facts that we need to know about that situation?
Mr. Mayor, the Darabin Council as an entity will continue to exist. I think the questions that may have been raised in the past might have been about actions of individuals within that council. But the entity, the legal entity, would still exist, and any agreement the council signed with Darabin would be continuing to be a legal agreement with that entity between our two entities. Just as if council have the elections, we lose councillors, the entity of Swan Hill City Council would continue similarly with Darabin.
Thank you.
Yes, Councillor McLeod.
Yeah, Mr. Layton, in the local government sector, it's not uncommon to have lead agencies in for one council looking after a particular service or project other councils. We've done it ourselves, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, Mr. Mayor. There are various arrangements that's been the case. We're in agreement with Mildura at the moment, I think, over emergency management, some emergency management stuff. We've got Regional Arts Development Officer, which is a cooperative arrangement. We've attempted to go down a waste management path. At this stage, that's still not finalised, but that's still the intention. And indeed, the new Local Government Act encourages councils to get together and try and jointly procure goods and services. So it's a clearly defined aim within the new Local Government Act.
Any further questions, councillors? Okay, can I have the move, please?
I'll move the motion as per the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor.
I'll second.
And seconded by Councillor Jenkins. Wish to speak to that, Councillor McPhee?
Yeah, look, as Mr. Linton said, it's about the local government sector, as many councils as they can. You get a larger organisation, you're obviously going to get a better deal, and I think that's what this is about, trying to save money. And I think we continually look at that. Darabin have had issues with council laws in the past, and who to know after this next election whether we're going to be around this table. So, as Mr. Linton said, the council as an entity itself, the council will continue, but maybe with new councillors. And I think this power purchase agreement is a good way to try and save money for us, which we continue to do in all aspects of our business. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor McPhee covered off on most of it. This essentially is this, our council doing the best we can by entering into an agreement with other councils to purchase power for a single entity or electricity provider. Where the numbers are, there's greater influence and we can get a better deal for our ratepayers. So I'm all for it.
Any further speakers for? Further speakers against? Would you like to close, Councillor McPhee?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Right, we go straight to a vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item B, 20.28, Audit Committee.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Me again. Councillors, the Audit Committee met on the 16th of April and a summary of what was discussed is included in the agenda. A confidential set of minutes are also attached, which give a little bit more detail as to the nature of the items that were discussed. The Audit Committee's role is to have a bit of oversight on particularly the way Council handles its risks, make sure that we've got the appropriate methods in place and procedures in place to minimise and reduce our risks, and that committee continues to fulfil that function well. The new Local Government Act will have some implications on the way the committee operates, but we're still coming to terms with that. But they won't come into effect until the 1st of September, so but I just foreshadow that there will be some changes in the future to the way the Audit Committee is structured and possibly goes about its business. But the report is for noting.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Hearing none, can I have a move, please?
I'll move, Mr. Mayor.
Seconder, Councillor Young. Councillor King.
Oh, look, only just to say, Mr. Mayor, I'm actually back on the Audit Committee again as one of my committees I sit on. I have sat on in the past, and it is certainly an interesting area that all councillors at some time during their term should take the opportunity to get in the Audit Committee, because it is amazing how much work does go on behind the scenes. As an independent from council, they do a lot of audits around making sure that we are doing the best we can. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Further speakers?
No, it's been covered.
Thank you. Any against? Okay, we'll go to a vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item B, 20.29, Council Plan, Progress Report for the third quarter, 2019-20.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Again, this is a regular quarterly report that we bring to Council just to inform the community on the progress of implementing the actions from the Council Plan. The report summarises some of the progress that's been made, as well as obviously it has a detailed report which gives more specific information as to how we have, and in some cases haven't yet implemented the actions. The Council Plan runs through until the 30th of June next financial year, so there is still over 12 months to implement all the actions identified in the council plan. In the event that some of those aren't actioned, this council always reports that to the community and carries those forward into the next period to see if to make sure we continue to monitor our progress. As well as this process, there is also a process to review the council plan every year, and that review process will give the council the opportunity to make any changes that they require to the council plan, albeit that there's only about 12 months of the current plan to go. So that process will commence in the next couple of weeks, and we'll give the opportunity to add additional information into the council plan, Mr. Mayor.
Any questions, councillors? No questions. Right there, can I have a mover, please?
I'll move as per the recommendations.
There's the recommendations. Do I have a second that?
I'll second, Mr. Mayor.
Do you wish to speak to the...
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, this is another quarterly report that gives an update on what council are undertaking and how it's progressing. For those watching at home that would like to peruse it, there's quite often I get questions around what's happening with the old decommissioning irrigation channel through tender. So there's a couple of points there on page 7. If you wish to have a look through it, gives you a bit of an idea of where things are at and how they're progressing and any roadblocks or any issues that come up. So then always welcome feedback from the community.
Thank you. Councillor Ben?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm a big fan of this document because it is easy to read, even for those that don't enjoy reading long documents to find out where things are at. It's as simple as having a look at the colour-coded progress status. So I do encourage, if you are wondering what's going on, for those at home, it is well worth downloading it and having a look at it. It will give you a very broad picture of what council are doing and where progress is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Further speakers? Any against? Okay. We'll vote. All those in favour? Passed unanimously.
Thank you, councillors.
Section C, Swan Material Report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report simply reports publicly on the use of the council seal over the last 1 month. We've used it on 3 documents, 2 on variations of lease between council and senior citizen centres, and the other one is to execute a Section 173 agreement in relation to native veg offset requirements for a planning permit. I'm just recommending the council notes the use of the notes the use of the seal.
Any questions, councillors? No questions? Mover, please. Move Councillor Bennett, seconded by Councillor Johnson. Speak to the motion.
No, procedural, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Go to a vote. All those in favour? Passed unanimously. Item C, 20.8, Council Assemblies, record of attendance and agenda items.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move the motion as per the recommendation. This procedure just tells us who's at what meeting, what we discussed.
And seconder, please, Councillor Jeffrey.
After 2,
Motion procedural, all those in favour? Carried unanimously. Section D.
Page 99.
Notice of motion. Do we have any notices of motion here?
No, not this month, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Section E, urgent items not included in the agenda.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, as can be seen in the agenda, as we typed in this slightly, it's about the passing of the Mayor of Villers Britnard, Patrick Simone. I think it's appropriate that we discuss that matter and maybe send one letter of condolence to that community.
A second for that. Oh, well, that's all. It's all.
Yeah, because you're not accepting it as
Yeah, accepted as an item of urgent features. Sorry, councillors.
Oh.
Yes, we all do. Good. Right. Thank you.
Yeah, look, I'll put the motion up as per I've given it to Ms. Lindsay. It's about just writing a letter of condolence, writing a letter to the Villers-Brittano community about the passing of their mayor, Patrick Simone, and offering our condolences to that community, and especially the relationship we've had between them with Robinvale and Villers-Brittano, the sister city relationship. I think it's important that we recognise them at this time. So that's the what we've got there now is a motion on moving right letter to Villers-Brittano, community acknowledging our relationship with their town and to offer our condolences for the passing of their mayor, Patrick Simone.
Get in second, please.
Yes.
Okay.
Just quickly, I think it's been said we've had a it's a sad time, but anyone when this happens, there's actually as a result of COVID, I believe, that Patrick Simone passed away. We did have a article in newspaper locally, but I think it's important that we, as a council, respect the friendship we have with Villers-Brittano through the connection of the twin cities of Robinvale and Villers, and we write letters to them offering our condolences for their loss. Thank you.
That's what about.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I do actually have some words from Ian Boyd, who's the president of the Robinvale Villas Brettoneux Association, and there's been a lot of press around the death of Mayor Simon. ABC National Drive did a story on Friday. Sunrise Daily have also done it, and the Robinvale Sentinel as well. But am I able to read these words from Mr. Boyd now? The Mayor of Villas Brettoneux requested in his latest visit to Robinvale in October 2019 last year that a service be held at the Robinvale Euston Memorial Park. In a previous visit, Patrick has visited the site which was yet to be developed at Memorial Park. He participated in a ceremony during which he turned the first sod, symbolically signifying the commencement of Robinvale Memorial Park. He expressed delight at the progress made and the plans for further development. Mayor Simon mentioned that he had built on the foundation of the Villiers Brettoneux Association, commenced by Dr. I'm going to get this wrong, Hubert Leleur, then Mayor of Villiers Brettoneux, and Bill McGinty. He also mentioned the contribution of Eves Tate and Sylvan Tate in fostering the relationship. We're all deeply saddened that we'll not see Mayor Patrick Simon in Robinvale again, nor will we be able to appreciate his contribution to the Villiers Brettoneux Anzac Day ceremony, which is broadcast live on Australian national television. Regards, Ian Boyd.
Councillor Bennett. Councillor, you have a few words?
I'd just like to say I was lucky enough to be the mayor when Mr. Simon came to Robinvale. He was a great leader of the community that was there, and they were all very happy sort of people, and they just loved being in Robinvale. So I think it's must be very sad for his family to have him pass away from this virus. Like, it's such a terrible thing. So yeah, I guess love to say what a wonderful man he appeared to be, and it's a sad time.
Any further speakers? Okay, we'll go to a vote on the motion. All those in favour? Passed unanimously.
I'm not aware of any other urgent business, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Section F. To consider and order on councillor reports. Councillor Young. Signature report.
Oh, yes. I was getting mixed up as what it actually was. Yes, the 28th of the 4th I had an assembly, the 5th of the 5th I had an assembly, 11th of the 5th we had an art gallery go-to meeting, which decided that their preference to do with the Our Place was preference number 1. On the 15th of the 5th we had Rail Freight Alliance meeting, and the main items that I think were worthy of discussion was the mention of the increase in the output at Ultima, where there's 5 to 6 shipments going out per week, but they're still only able to do 25 kilometres per hour after repairs to the line, which isn't really that satisfactory. They also had discussion around the proposal that being put up from somewhere. I'm not exactly sure where it had come from. It'd have to be that Shire area down there, or local government area down around the area of Eaglehawk to Inglewood. And the proposal was that 65 million be spent on repairs and upgrades to the Eaglehawk to Inglewood line, which has come about after a flood about 10 years ago, and the need for other general repairs. Discussion that took place was that we need to stick to the priorities of the Murray-Darling Basin Rail project and not get diverted to others at this stage. It would be a bit of a waste of effort, as felt.
Pretty quiet. My end as well, Mr. Mayor. I'm obviously working from home and being stuck at home. I have had a fair bit of contact and interest from the community around the discussions on the flight school, so I encourage anyone in the community to keep giving us a call or sending us an email with their concerns so that we can have that discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's been a couple of land meeting virtual catch-ups for both the Robin Vale and Swan Hill groups. There's another one at the end of it, and they seem to be working really well, which is great. There was also an Anzac Day wreath laying, which was very, very different in Robin Vale at the Cenotaph on the Friday before Anzac Day because it was the height of lockdown, so had to be strategically planned. And that it was, so it did happen still, just on the Friday before Anzac Day at the Robin Vale Cenotaph. And grape harvest has almost rounded up in Robin Vale, just before the frost come. So that's positive, and from all reports, there's not a huge amount still sitting in cool rooms, which is positive.
Councillor McLean, I've got one between us, so it's fairly quiet over here. Swan Hill meeting.
Nothing to report, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I'm pretty much the same, apart from anyway the go-to meeting. Oh, the replay, yeah, I'll cut off the videos and all those other things, which I'm glad we've got some very good people in the media department. That's it. Yeah. Any camera items?
No, Mr. Mayor.
No camera items? That's it. You finished? Okay, that's about it, councillors. Agenda items, we're meeting closed.
Councillor Young, can I advise you that having gone past the Bridgewater railway station a number of times in the last week or so, there is an awful lot of gear sitting there, front end loaders, excavators, the like, all brand new, no